Going out to Athens, Georgia, Kirby Smart, always working on the recruiting trail. What's the latest out there right now, Steve?
Well, perfect segue from our Oklahoma segment to our Georgia segment. On 300 quarterback, longtime Oklahoma commit Jaden O'Neal visiting Georgia this week for 2 days, arriving today with his dad, Circle of Trust, or T.D. Jenkins. They're going to be in Athens today and tomorrow. And I view Georgia as the biggest threat to flip him from Oklahoma. And so as Oklahoma continues to push for Bo Bentley, they'd like to sign two quarterbacks this cycle. I think it's going to be hard. And Jaden O'Neal is looking around at several other programs. He's at Georgia. You have Florida State. You have Arizona in the mix, to name a couple other programs for Jaden O'Neal. But Georgia is very intriguing for him. He is on campus. The Bulldogs offered in January. Now, Georgia's also hosting Jared Curtis this week. Jared Curtis is in Eugene, Oregon right now. Flew out to Oregon on Saturday night. He's the number one quarterback in the country, JD. You know him well. He's out right there in your city, Nashville Christian. He's at Oregon. Got there on Saturday night, spending all day Sunday, all day Monday, all day Tuesday, flying to Athens on Wednesday. Going to spend Thursday, Friday, and Saturday in Athens with Georgia. Can Georgia bring that recruitment full circle and get Jared Curtis back in the fold? I give the edge to Oregon right now going into these visits. I think he's going to try and make a decision coming out of these visits. But Georgia's recruiting several other quarterbacks just in case they don't get Jared Curtis back in the fold. Jaden O'Neal is one of them. These aren't the only two big timers that are on campus this week for Georgia. Just to highlight a couple more, five-star linebacker Tyler Atkinson returning. He's already been there a couple times this calendar year. Watch Georgia prepare for Notre Dame in a practice, return to junior day, the state champion. Georgia's been considered the longtime favorite, but he's coming off a great visit to Clemson, Auburn, Ohio State, a couple others you're keeping an eye on in that recruitment for Tyler Atkinson. Ryan Mosley is one of the top two-way players in the state, receiver, safety, four-star recruit out of Carrollton. My on-3 RPMs on Georgia. He just had a great visit at Clemson himself. South Carolina, some others are involved for Ryan Mosley, but Georgia getting him back to campus on Tuesday. Calvin Russell's an on-300 receiver from South Florida that likes Syracuse a ton, Miami a lot, of course. But Georgia's real interesting to him. He sees an opportunity to come in and make an early impact, sees a need, loves the track record of Georgia and the product that they have as a football team. He is expected on campus this week. There's going to be a lot of really talented prospects at Georgia over the course of this week. So you're going to want to stay locked in to Rusty Manziel, myself and the guys over at Dogs HQ.
I was going to say, Georgia, it's never a dull moment when you're talking recruiting and Kirby Smart's involved in that staff. You mentioned the receiver position. Is that a position that you feel like the Dogs will target potentially more heavily with what they didn't have in that room a season ago? I know they went heavy on the recruiting trail in the 2025 class at receiver, but is that something you think they'll still continue to prioritize that position, or do you think it'll kind of be we'll just sort of pick and choose our spots across the board here?
Well, they went heavy on the trail, obviously landing Talon Taylor, who was a five-star on 3, CJ Wiley, one of the top receivers in the state. Porta was big for them. Noah Thomas, Zachariah Branch transferring in to run alongside Dylan Bell. You obviously hope guys like Nitro Tuggle from Indiana, the Hoosier State, where I'm from, take off in their second year in the program. But look, until they can become more electric on offense, it's going to be a point of emphasis for Kirby Smart and this coaching staff. Obviously, Gunnar Stockton takes the reins this year. You got Puglisi in the program. I think Georgia would like to sign two quarterbacks this cycle. Jared Curtis is target numero uno. You got Jaden O'Neal on campus. You got guys like Landon Duckworth out there as well as a top target for Georgia. So offense remains a position of need. They're always going to recruit massive offensive linemen. They had a really good offensive line class in this last cycle that kind of meets the standard that they recruit the position at. But wide out, being more electric, difference makers. You know, there were a lot of drop passes last year, pivotal plays that, you know, didn't allow Georgia to play in the last two games that they aspire to play in year in and year out.
Yeah, you mentioned the drop passes and just sort of the maybe left wanting more feeling offensively for Georgia, which isn't something we've come to expect by any stretch of the imagination from what they're doing out there at Athens.
Right.
You mentioned the two quarterbacks being recruited in the class and kind of how that's what they're approaching with this 2026 cycle. What's the pitch like if you're a Mike Bobo or a Kirby Smart and you're trying to recruit a kid and tell him, hey, just so you know, we are going to take another quarterback. Are you okay with coming in and competing? I know in modern college football now, it's tough to keep more than one serviceable quarterback on your roster at a time. What's the pitch like for Georgia and how are they able to do that?
Well, if you're looking at a program like Georgia, if you're seriously looking at a program like Georgia, you're not afraid to compete. You are secure in who you are as a prospect and player. And so it just kind of falls in line. Every position room is going to be stacked with talent or guys that are very athletic with high upsides. And the standard is to win the national championship, to win the SEC, and then to win the national championship. And so you know what you signed up for there. And you're normally betting on yourself to be the guy that's on that front line playing. And if that's you, you're probably going to hear your name called high in the NFL draft. Now, they've been able to point to the quarterback position and maximize some guys that weren't high-end NFL talents. But Mike Bobo's a veteran. He coached Matt Stafford. He's had some of the top offenses in the SEC over the course of his career. There's a lot to point to in his career for any quarterback that they're recruiting nationally. And that's why guys like Jared Curtis, Jaden O'Neal, and Landon Duckworth have Georgia on their short list. And for Jared Curtis, in the final two, closing in on a decision.
Like Steve mentioned, a lot going on in Georgia recruiting. Dog fans, subscribe to this channel. Get dialed in over at Dogs HQ. Rusty Mansell on the team, crushing all the coverage. You do not want to miss it.